The combined human and Zephyrian fleets met at Haven's Rest, where crystalline gardens reflected the light of dying stars. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching alien vessels take position alongside ships that had fought them. Weeks earlier, the temporary alliance felt fragile, but it was their only hope. Emperor Keshvar himself commanded the Zephyrian forces from his massive dreadnought. The ancient ruler appeared on the communication screen looking older than his 1,000 years. Behind him, the bridge of his ship showed damage from previous encounters with Devourer scouts. Admiral Hayes, my tactical officers estimate we face a force of over 3,000 machine vessels. Our combined fleets number less than 400 ships. The mathematics of survival are not favorable. Hayes nodded as she studied the tactical display, showing enemy formations approaching from multiple vectors. The Devourers moved with perfect coordination that suggested a single controlling intelligence. They had been doing this for millions of years. Captain Morrison brought the Defiant into position as part of the main battle line. His ship had been retrofitted with Zephyrian shield generators and human weapons in a desperate attempt to improve their chances. Amy Foster coordinated with alien tactical officers whose names she could not pronounce. Captain, the Devourer advance elements will reach weapons range in 6 hours. Enemy formation suggests they intend to establish a blockade around Haven's Rest and systematically harvest the population. Morrison activated his personal communicator to speak with Admiral Hayes privately. The weight of command had aged her visibly in the weeks since New Denver, but her eyes still held determination. Admiral, the crew wants to know if we have any chance of winning this fight. Hayes smiled sadly. Jake, we have the same chance we had at New Denver. None at all, but we also have the same choice we had then. Fight or surrender. The first wave of Devourer machines emerged from hyperspace like a plague of metal locusts. Each vessel was perfectly geometric and showed no signs of age despite being older than most civilizations. They moved with mechanical precision toward the defending fleet's commander. Vexhide transmitted tactical data as his sensors analyzed the enemy formation. Admiral, the machine vessels appear to be constructed from harvested materials. I am detecting hull signatures that match 17 different species, including some that were consumed millennia ago. Hayes felt sick as she realized the implications. Every Devourer ship was built from the bones of dead civilizations. The metal that formed their hulls had once been cities and homes and dreams. The battle began when the lead Devourer vessels entered weapons range and opened fire with beams of pure energy that could cut through starship armor like paper. The defending fleets responded with everything they had, but their weapons seemed inadequate against such ancient technology. Captain Morrison led a desperate assault against the Devourer command node that coordinated the enemy fleet. The Defiant had been modified with experimental weapons that drew power directly from the ship's reactor. It was a suicide mission and everyone aboard knew it. Amy, route all available power to the main guns. We only get one shot at this. Amy worked frantically at her controls as the ship shook under enemy fire. The Defiant's hull was breaching in multiple locations, but the engines still functioned. Morrison aimed his ship directly at the heart of the Devourer formation. The experimental weapon fired once and tore through space like a concentrated star. The beam punched through the command node and caused a chain reaction that destroyed dozens of enemy vessels. But the effort overloaded the Defiant's reactor beyond any hope of repair. Morrison ordered the evacuation of all non-essential personnel while he manually piloted the ship toward the largest concentration of Devourer vessels. The bridge crew refused to leave and Amy remained at her station coordinating targeting data until the end. Captain, it has been an honor serving with you. Morrison smiled as he watched his crew work with calm efficiency despite facing certain death. Amy, the honor has been mine. Tell my family that we did not surrender. The Defiant exploded in a brilliant flash that temporarily blinded sensors across the battlefield. The chain reaction destroyed over 100 Devourer vessels and created a gap in their formation that allowed other ships to escape. Emperor Keshvar watched the human sacrifice with something approaching awe. In his 1,000 years of life, he had never seen such determination in the face of hopeless odds. The humans fought like their ancestors who had conquered their own world through sheer stubborn refusal to quit. Captain Roy Davis brought his converted merchant vessel alongside the Zephyrian flagship as both fleets continued their desperate battle. His cargo holds were filled with volunteer fighters who had chosen to die defending their homes rather than live as refugees. Emperor, my people want to know if this alliance will survive the battle. If we somehow win, do we go back to fighting each other? Keshver considered the question carefully as explosions lit the darkness around them. Captain Davis, your species has taught mine something about honor that we had forgotten. If we survive this day, then the Zephyrian Empire will remember its debt. The Federation Council watched the battle from the safety of their distant chambers and felt shame for the first time in centuries. Federation President Zaltok stared at the tactical displays showing impossible courage in the face of certain Extinction Ambassador. Ruth Torres had remained behind when the Federation evacuated their embassy staff from human space. Now she stood in the council chambers delivering humanity's final message to the galaxy. Honored delegates, humanity never asked you to fight for us. We never begged for your protection. We only asked to be left alone to protect our own. Now we protect you too, because that is who we are. The battle raged for 18 hours as organic life made its final stand against mechanical perfection. Ships on both sides were destroyed faster than sensors could track, but the defending fleets refused to retreat. Admiral Hayes commanded the defense from her crippled flagship as system after system failed around her. The bridge was open to space and her crew worked in environmental suits breathing recycled air, but they kept fighting. Dr. Helen Carter had discovered something in the captured Devourer technology that might turn the tide. The machines were controlled by a central intelligence that coordinated their actions across vast distances. If that intelligence could be disrupted, Admiral, I can modify our communication array to broadcast a virus into the Devourer network. It might confuse their coordination long enough for our remaining ships to escape. Hayes looked at the tactical display showing the handful of human and Zephyrian vessels still fighting against overwhelming odds. Escape was not an option she could accept. Helen, upload your virus, but do not target their coordination. Target their memory banks. If we are going to die, then we make sure they remember us. The virus spread through the Devourer network like wildfire, causing ancient minds to experience something they had not felt in millions of years: fear. For the first time since their awakening, the machines encountered prey that fought back effectively. The battle ended with both fleets in ruins, but the Devourer advance was broken. The machines retreated toward the galactic rim to repair their losses and reconsider their strategy. They had learned that this galaxy contained species willing to die rather than submit. Admiral Hayes stood in the wreckage of her command center and looked at the survivors of humanity's greatest battle. 12 ships remained operational out of the hundreds that had joined the defense. The cost had been terrible, but they had achieved something impossible. Captain Kate Rivers brought her battered liner alongside the flagship to transfer wounded personnel. Her ship was held together by emergency patches and determination, but she was still fighting. Admiral, what are our orders now? Do we pursue the enemy or return to defend our colonies? Hayes smiled as she realized that they still had choices to make. They were still alive and still free. Kate, we go home. We rebuild our fleet and prepare for their return. And we remember what we proved here. Amy Foster had survived the destruction of the Defiant in an escape pod and now served as Hayes' tactical officer. She looked up from her makeshift console with pride and exhaustion written across her face. Admiral, we are receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Other species are asking how we stopped the Devourers. They want to know how we survived. Hayes activated the long-range communication array to address the galaxy that had abandoned them. Her words would travel across 1,000 worlds and inspire countless beings to choose courage over safety. This is Admiral Hayes of the Earth Defense Force. Today, humanity stood against extinction and refused to yield. We lost ships and friends and heroes, but we did not lose ourselves. We are still here. We are still free. And we still do not beg. The response came from across the galaxy as species that had cowered before the Devourer threat found their courage. The Federation Council Received thousands of requests for alliance with humanity. Former enemies asked to learn human tactics and philosophy. Hayes looked at her surviving officers and felt something she had not expected to feel again: hope. The galaxy was learning that courage was contagious, and that freedom was worth fighting. For signal all ships, we return to human space. There is much work to do, and our people are waiting for us to come home. Dr. Helen Carter knelt beside the dying Zephyrian prisoner in the medical bay of Defense Station. Alpha, the alien soldier, had been wounded during the boarding action that captured Commander Vexhai flagship, but had refused all medical treatment for weeks. Now, as his life faded, he seemed desperate to speak. The Zephyrian language came in harsh whispers that Carter had to strain to understand. What she heard made her blood run cold. The prisoner spoke of worlds consumed and stars going dark. He spoke of machines that turned entire civilizations into raw materials for their endless expansion. The devourers wake every 10,000 years to harvest the galaxy. They sleep in the void between stars and dream of consumption. We tried to gather enough resources to fight them, but it is too late. They have already begun. Carter recorded every word as the alien described the fate of the 12 conquered systems. The Zephyrians had not enslaved those populations or stolen their resources. They had evacuated everyone they could and abandoned the rest to buy time. We needed ships and weapons and worlds to sacrifice in their path. The Federation would never have agreed to the necessary measures, so we took what we needed by force. Now even that will not be enough. The prisoner died with his eyes fixed on the ceiling, speaking words in a dialect Carter could not translate. She suspected he was praying to whatever gods the Zephyrians worshipped. She hoped they were listening. Admiral Hayes called an emergency meeting of all senior officers after reviewing Carter's report. The command center buzzed with activity as personnel tried to make sense of long-range sensor readings that defied explanation. Captain Morrison attended via holographic transmission from the Defiant, which was patrolling the outer edge of human space. His ship had detected the first signs of Devourer scouts 3 days earlier, but the readings made no sense. Admiral, the contacts are unlike anything in our databases. No biological signatures and technology that appears to be self-modifying. They seem to be studying our defensive positions. Amy Foster worked at the tactical display, trying to project likely invasion routes based on the limited data available. Every scenario ended with complete annihilation of human civilization within months. The scouts appeared to be mapping our industrial capacity and population centers. If the prisoner was telling the truth about their harvest cycle, then they are preparing for systematic consumption of all organic life. Hayes studied the tactical projections with growing dread. Humanity had just fought a desperate war against the Zephyrian Empire. Their fleet was damaged and their resources stretched to the breaking point. Now they face something infinitely worse. Federation mediator Quintal of the Andromedan Collective appeared on the main communications screen with an offer that sounded like salvation but felt like damnation. The tall, graceful alien spoke with the authority of someone who had never doubted their own superiority. Admiral Hayes, the Federation Council has reviewed the situation and prepared a final offer for humanity. Accept immediate relocation to uninhabited systems beyond the galactic edge, and the Federation will provide transportation and basic supplies. Hayes felt her jaw tighten as she realized what the alien was really proposing. You want us to run away and let the Devourers consume our colonies? Quintal nodded with infuriating calm. The Federation cannot sacrifice billions of lives to defend 3 human worlds. The relocation offer represents unprecedented generosity given humanity recent criminal actions. Captain Morrison's voice came through the speakers with barely controlled anger. What about the 15 million humans currently living on those worlds? Do they get a vote in this generous offer? The Andromedan waved a dismissive hand. Captain Morrison, the Federation evacuation fleet can transport essential personnel and minimal personal effects. Some sacrifice is necessary to preserve the greater good. Hayes looked around the command center at officers who had risked everything to defend their people. These men and women had chosen duty over safety and honor, over survival. She would not betray that choice now. Mediator quinal humanity has survived ice ages and asteroid impacts and nuclear wars. We have faced extinction before and found a way to continue. We will not abandon our worlds to monsters because you are. Afraid to fight, the transmission ended and Hayes turned to address her senior staff. The decision she was about to make would define humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come. The Federation wants us to run. The Zephyrians want us to surrender. The Devourers want us to die quietly. I have a different proposal, she activated. The tactical display showing the approaching Devourer forces and the scattered human fleet. The numbers were impossible, but that had never stopped humans before. We stand and fight. We make them pay for every world and every life. If we are going to die then, we die as humans. Nancy Klein, the diplomatic advisor who had been silent during the meeting, finally spoke up. Admiral, the Federation offer represents our only chance for survival as a species. Exile is better than extinction. Hayes studied the woman carefully. Klein had served faithfully for years, but she had always believed that compromise was better than conflict. Nancy, if we run now, we will spend the rest of existence looking over our shoulders. We will raise our children to be refugees, and our grandchildren will forget what it means to be human. Captain Roy Davis joined the conversation from his merchant vessel, where he was coordinating civilian evacuation efforts. Admiral, my people are asking what they should do. Do we load the ships and run, or do we stand and fight? Morrison answered before Hayes could respond. Roy, your people are human. That means they get to choose their own fate. But they should know that some of us will be staying. The debate continued for hours as reports came in from across human space. Long-range sensors detected massive Devourer formations approaching from multiple directions. The enemy appeared to be coordinating their advance with precision that suggested vast intelligence. Amy called out from her station with urgency in her voice. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian Empire. Commander Vexhai is requesting permission to speak with you. Hayes authorized the communication and found herself facing the alien officer who had tried to conquer her colonies weeks earlier. Vexhai looked haggard and desperate, but his eyes held something that might have been respect. Admiral Hayes, the Devourer advance forces have reached the outer territories of the Zephyrian Empire. My Emperor has authorized me to propose a temporary alliance against our common enemy. Hayes felt surprise and suspicion in equal measure. Commander, the last time we met you were trying to steal our worlds. Vexhai nodded grimly. The last time we met, I believed conquest was the path to survival. I have since learned that survival may not be possible regardless of our actions. But honor remains. The Zephyrian commander transmitted tactical data showing the true scope of the Devourer threat. Thousands of machine ships converging on the galaxy from the dark spaces between stars. Ancient intelligences that had already consumed civilizations beyond counting. Admiral, your people proved at New Denver that they do not surrender easily. My people have fought for survival for generations. Perhaps together we can accomplish what neither could achieve alone. Hayes looked at her officers and saw the same question in every face. Could they trust the aliens who had tried to enslave them? Could they work with enemies to fight a greater threat? Morrison made the decision for all of them. Admiral, if we are going to make our last stand, then we might as well make it count. The Zephyrians know how to fight, and we need all the help we can get. Hayes activated the fleet-wide communication system to address every human ship in space. Her words would carry across the darkness to crews preparing for battle against impossible odds. This is Admiral Hayes to all vessels. The Devourers are coming, and they bring extinction with them. The Federation has abandoned us and offered exile as our only hope. The Zephyrians have offered alliance in defiance of mutual destruction. She paused and looked around the command center one final time. We have chosen our path. We will not beg for mercy or run from annihilation. We will stand here at the edge of human space and show the galaxy what it means to be human. The response from the fleet was immediate and overwhelming. Cheers and shouts of defiance came through the communication array from dozens of ships. Humanity had made its choice. Commander Julie West stood in the interrogation chamber aboard Defense Station Alpha, studying the captured Zephyrian data cores. The intelligence gathered from Commander Vexhi's flagship revealed a network of supply bases and fleet movements. That could change everything. The Zephyrians had made a critical mistake by underestimating human technology. Amy Foster worked beside her translating alien tactical displays into human-readable formats. The young officer had become expert at reading Zephyrian military codes during the 3 weeks since the Battle of New Denver. What they discovered made both women pause. Commander, look at these supply routes. The Zephyrian Empire is operating on much thinner logistics than we thought. They have been moving so fast that their supply lines are stretched across dozens of star systems. West nodded as she studied the holographic display showing enemy fleet positions. They assumed they would capture human industrial facilities intact. Now they have to supply a war effort from bases hundreds of light years away. Admiral Hayes entered the intelligence center and reviewed the data with growing excitement. The victory at New Denver had bought them time, but not much. Zephyrian reinforcements were already moving toward human space in numbers that would overwhelm any defensive effort. Julie, what are our options? West highlighted several targets on the tactical display. Admiral, we cannot win a defensive war. Every engagement will cost us ships we cannot replace while the enemy has seemingly unlimited reserves. But if we can disrupt their supply network, we might force them to reconsider their invasion timeline. Hayes studied the proposed targets carefully. 3 supply convoys carrying fuel and ammunition. 2 depot stations providing maintenance for Zephyrian warships. 1 major logistics hub that coordinated fleet movements across an entire sector. This would require us to take the offensive against targets deep in enemy territory. The Federation Council will consider this an act of aggression and expel humanity. Permanently, West smiled grimly. Admiral, the Federation Council already considers us criminals for defending our own colonies. We have nothing left to lose. Captain Morrison joined the meeting as plans took shape for Operation Payback. The human fleet would split into small task forces and strike multiple targets simultaneously. Each attack would be hit and run with the goal of maximum damage and minimum casualties. Jake, I need you to take a squadron and hit the supply convoy in the Kepler system. Roy Davis will command the civilian ships in a raid on the fuel depot at Rigel Station. Kate Rivers will lead her volunteers against the maintenance facility at Volf 359. Morrison studied the tactical projections and frowned. Admiral, these targets are heavily defended. We will be operating without support deep in enemy space. If any task force gets trapped, Hayes cut him off with a gesture. Jake, we cannot fight the entire Zephyrian Empire head-to-head, but we can make them pay a price for every advance. We can force them to guard every supply line and protect every depot. The task forces launched within hours of the planning session. Morrison led 5 ships, including the Defiant, toward the Kepler system, where long-range sensors had detected a major supply convoy. The ships moved in complete communication silence to avoid detection. Amy coordinated the sensor sweeps from her station as they approached the target area. The convoy was exactly where Zephyrian intelligence had indicated. 20 cargo vessels escorted by 8 warships carrying enough supplies to fuel a major offensive. Captain, the escort force includes 2 heavy cruisers and 6 destroyers. They will outnumber us, but our ships are faster and more maneuverable. Morrison activated the tactical display and studied the enemy formation. The cargo ships were bunched together in the center, with escorts spread in a protective screen. Standard Zephyrian doctrine designed to protect valuable supplies. We hit the escorts first and force them to chase us away from the convoy. Once they are scattered, we double back and destroy the cargo ships. The attack began with a spread of quantum torpedoes fired from maximum range. 2 Zephyrian destroyers exploded before they knew they were under attack. The remaining escorts turned to engage the human ships while the cargo vessels attempted to escape. Morrison led his squadron in a high-speed chase that drew the enemy cruisers away from their charges. The Zephyrians took the bait and pursued the faster human ships into an asteroid field where their size became a disadvantage. Captain Linda Park commanded the second element that doubled back to attack the defenseless cargo ships. 20 vessels carrying fuel, ammunition, and replacement parts for the invasion fleet died in minutes under concentrated fire across Human space similar raids destroyed Zephyrian logistics networks. Captain Davis led his civilian volunteers in a successful attack on Rigel Station that left the facility burning and unable to refuel enemy ships for months. Captain Rivers coordinated her assault on Volf 359 with precision that impressed even veteran military observers. The converted passenger liner had become a formidable warship under her command, and the volunteer crew fought with determination that surprised their enemies. The raid succeeded beyond all expectations, but they came with a price. The Federation Council formally expelled humanity from galactic civilization and branded all human ships as pirate vessels. Trade agreements were canceled and diplomatic relations severed. Federation President Zaltak delivered the announcement personally in a transmission broadcast across the galaxy. His Centaurian features showed the anger of someone who had been defied by creatures he considered inferior. The human species has chosen the path of violence and aggression over peaceful cooperation. They have rejected the wisdom of the galactic community and embraced their primitive warrior nature. From this day forward, humanity is expelled from the Federation and considered hostile to civilized space. Admiral Hayes received the transmission aboard her flagship as the task forces returned from their successful raids. Around her, the command center continued working, but she could feel the weight of what they had lost. Helen Carter joined Hayes in her private office to discuss intelligence gathered from captured Zephyrian prisoners. The xenobiologist had been studying enemy physiology and psychology for weeks, trying to understand what drove their expansion. Admiral, I have made a discovery that changes everything we thought we knew about the Zephyrian Empire. Hayes looked up from reports about Federation shipping being redirected away from human space. What kind of discovery, Helen? Carter activated a holographic display showing brain scans and biological data from Zephyrian prisoners. They are not expanding because they want to conquer the galaxy. They are expanding because they are running from something. The display showed stress indicators and fear responses that suggested the Zephyrian military was operating under extreme pressure. Intercepted communications mentioned something called the Devourers approaching from the galactic rim. The prisoners are terrified of something they will not discuss directly, but the medical data shows trauma responses consistent with witnessing mass extinction events. Hayes felt a chill as she realized the implications. You are suggesting that the Zephyrian Empire is not the real threat? Carter nodded grimly. Admiral, I believe they are gathering resources and territory to fight something much worse. Something that scares them so badly they would rather die conquering than face it unprepared. Long-range sensors detected new contacts at the edge of human space. Not Zephyrian ships, but something else entirely. Strange vessels with technology signatures that match nothing in Federation databases. Morrison received the alert aboard the Defiant as his task force completed repairs after the Kepler raid. Amy studied the sensor readings with growing confusion. Captain, these new contacts are not responding to any communication attempts. Their technology appears to be completely artificial with no biological signatures. Morrison felt his stomach drop as he realized what they might be facing. Amy, send all sensor data to Admiral Hayes immediately and prepare the ship for combat operations. The galaxy was about to learn that the Zephyrian Empire had been the least of their problems. Something ancient and terrible was awakening, and humanity stood directly in its path. Hayes stood on her bridge, watching the tactical display update with new threats. The Federation had abandoned them. The Zephyrians wanted to conquer them. Now something worse was coming. Signal all ships. Whatever is out there, we face it as we have faced everything else. Together and without surrender. The unknown contacts continued their approach toward human space, carrying death in forms the galaxy had never imagined. The Zephyrian fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the new Denver system like a swarm of metal insects. Commander Vexhai stood on the bridge of his flagship and counted the small collection of human ships waiting for him. 68 vessels against his force of over 200. The humans had chosen death over surrender. Vexhai was a veteran of 12 conquest campaigns. He had seen entire species kneel before Zephyrian might without firing a single shot. The Sight of such a small defensive force should have amused him, but something about the human formation made him pause. Captain Jake Morrison watched the enemy fleet approach from the bridge of the Defiant. The human ships were arranged in a defensive sphere around New Denver, with the heavier cruisers forming the outer shell. Inside that shell, the converted civilian vessels waited with their volunteer crews and improvised weapons. Amy Foster called out readings from her tactical station. 237 confirmed enemy contacts. Multiple ship classes, including at least 12 heavy dreadnoughts. They are maintaining formation and approaching at standard battle speed. Morrison nodded and opened a channel to Admiral Hayes, who was commanding the defense from her flagship. The plan was simple because it had to be. The human fleet could not win a straight fight, so they would not fight one. Admiral Morrison here. Enemy fleet is in sensor range and maintaining expected approach vector. Hayes' voice came through the speaker, calm and steady. Understood, Jake. All ships prepare for engagement plan Delta. Wait for my signal. The Zephyrian formation continued its advance with the arrogance of a force that had never met serious resistance. Vexai transmitted his standard surrender demand on all frequencies. His voice carried the certainty of someone who expected immediate compliance. Human vessels, this is Commander Vexai of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. You will stand down immediately and allow the peaceful occupation of this system. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your forces and the orbital bombardment of the planet below. Morrison waited for Admiral Hayes to respond. The communication array crackled to life, and Hayes' voice carried across space to both fleets. Her words would echo through the galaxy for generations. Commander Vexai, this is Admiral Hayes of the Earth Defense Force. You have entered human space without permission and demanded the surrender of our colonies. We have a response for you. Morrison smiled as he heard the steel in Hayes' voice. Every human ship in the fleet would be listening to this moment. The moment when humanity chose its path. Humanity does not beg. If you want our worlds, come and take them. The transmission ended and space erupted into chaos. The human fleet moved with precision that surprised the Zephyrians. Instead of charging forward to die gloriously, the humans split into 3 groups and attacked from different angles. Morrison led the fast escort ships in a flanking maneuver designed to confuse the enemy formation. Captain Linda Park commanded the heavy cruisers that formed the main battle line. The converted civilian vessels under Captain Roy Davis waited in reserve with orders to support wherever the line weakened. The first exchange of fire lit up the darkness between worlds. Zephyrian plasma beams lanced out toward human ships while quantum torpedoes streaked back in response. The Defiant shook as enemy fire grazed her shields, but Morrison kept his ship moving. Amy coordinated the tactical display and called out target priorities. 3 enemy destroyers breaking formation to pursue us. Recommend evasive action. Morrison banked the Defiant hard to starboard and fired a full spread of torpedoes at the lead Zephyrian ship. The weapons were Earth technology developed through centuries of conflict, and they punched through alien armor like it was paper. The enemy destroyer exploded in a brilliant flash that temporarily blinded sensors on both sides. Morrison felt grim satisfaction as he watched the wreckage tumble toward the planet below. The Zephyrians were learning that humans bit back across the battlefield. Captain Park led her cruisers in a head-on assault against the enemy heavy units. The used Resolute traded fire with a Zephyrian dreadnought that outweighed her 3-1. Park refused to retreat even as her ship took massive damage. All weapons concentrate fire on enemy engine sections. We cannot penetrate their main armor, but we can cripple their mobility. The human weapons found their marks, and the dreadnought began listing to port as its engines failed. Park pressed her advantage and closed to point-blank range where her weapons could do maximum damage. Commander Vexai watched his perfect formation dissolve into individual duels as human ships refused to die easily. Every enemy vessel destroyed took at least 1 Zephyrian ship with it. His tactical officer reported damage assessments that made no sense. Sir, the human weapons are more effective than our intelligence reports indicated. They are penetrating our armor at ranges we considered safe. Vexai snarled and ordered his reserve ships into the battle. The humans were brave, but they were still outnumbered. Courage alone could not overcome superior numbers. Captain Kate Rivers brought her converted liner into the fight with volunteer soldiers firing from improvised weapon ports. The New Hope was not built for war, but her crew fought like veterans. Rivers herself had been a Navy pilot before retiring to civilian service. The battle raged for 6 hours as ships dueled across millions of kilometers of space. Human vessels exploded under concentrated fire, but they took their enemies with them. The Zephyrians learned to fear the sight of a crippled human ship accelerating toward them on a collision course. Morrison coordinated a boarding action when the Defiant grappled with a damaged enemy cruiser. Marine Colonel Steve Martinez led the assault through airlocks while Morrison provided covering fire from the ship weapons. Zephyrian crew fought desperately, but they were not prepared for human close combat tactics. Martinez and his Marines moved through the enemy ship like a force of nature. Within an hour, they had secured the bridge and captured vital intelligence data. As the battle entered its final phase, both fleets were bloodied and exhausted. The humans had lost 18 ships, but they had destroyed over 60 Zephyrian vessels. More importantly, they had captured Commander Vexhai himself. When boarding parties overwhelmed his flagship, Admiral Hayes broadcast a message to the surviving ships of both fleets. Her voice carried across the battlefield with quiet authority. "Commander Vexhai, you came here expecting easy conquest. You found humans who refused to kneel. Take this message back to your empire. Every human world will cost you dearly. Every human life you take will be avenged." The remaining Zephyrian ships retreated toward the edge of the system, carrying news of their defeat. For the first time in their history, the unstoppable Zephyrian Empire had been stopped by what they considered an inferior species. Morrison stood on his damaged bridge and looked at the tactical display showing the cost of victory. Too many good people had died defending their homes, but they had proven something important. The galaxy would learn that humanity did not surrender. They did not beg for mercy or trade their dignity for safety. When pushed, they pushed back harder. Amy looked up from her station with exhaustion and pride written across her face. "Sir, we are receiving congratulations from colonies across human space. Word of the victory is spreading." Morrison nodded and activated the communication system to address his crew. These people had risked everything and won something precious. They had won the right to remain free. This is the captain. Today we proved that human worlds cannot be taken by simple demand. We proved that our people matter. We proved that sometimes the right choice is also the hard choice. He paused and looked around the bridge at faces that showed the cost of their victory. The war is not over. The Zephyrians will return with more ships and greater fury. But they will find us ready. They will find us standing. They will find us human. Admiral Lisa Hayes stood in the command center of Defense Station Alpha and watched the tactical display show impossible numbers. 37 Earth defense ships scattered across human space. 847 confirmed Zephyrian vessels moving toward the 3 colonies. The computer had calculated their odds of success at less than 1%. Amy Foster worked at the main tactical console running scenarios that all ended the same way. Complete destruction of human forces within 6 hours of engagement. The young officer had transferred to Alpha when Captain Morrison brought the Defiant to join Hayes' flagship. She looked up from her calculations with frustration written across her face. "Admiral, the numbers do not work. Even if we had twice as many ships, we could not hold 3 separate systems against this kind of force." Hayes nodded but kept studying the display. She had commanded fleets for 15 years and fought in 7 major engagements. Numbers told part of the story, but they never told the whole story. Humans had won battles against worse odds before. The communication array activated and Federation negotiator Kethter appeared on the main screen. The Altarian looked exactly like what he was, a politician who had never fired a weapon or lost a friend in combat. His blue skin was perfectly clean and his ceremonial robes showed no signs of wear. "Admiral Hayes, I have come to offer you one final opportunity to reconsider your position. The Federation Council is prepared to overlook your recent actions if you comply with the evacuation order immediately." Hayes stepped closer to the screen. Behind her, the command center continued working, but she could feel everyone listening to the conversation. These people had chosen to follow her into certain death, and they deserved to hear what their government thought of their sacrifice negotiator. Kethter, what exactly do you think we are reconsidering? The Altarian shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Admiral, you are a military officer with an outstanding record. Surely you understand that sacrificing 3 colonies is preferable to a war that could kill billions across the galaxy. Hayes felt her temper rise but kept her voice level. And what happens when the Zephyrians decide they want 3 more colonies? Next year, do we sacrifice those 2? Kethter waved a hand dismissively. The Zephyrian Empire has assured the Federation Council that these territorial adjustments will satisfy their expansion needs for the foreseeable future. Behind Hayes, someone made a sound that might have been laughter or might have been disgust. Amy looked up from her console with an expression that suggested she thought the Altarian was completely insane. Negotiator, let me explain something to you about human history. We had leaders once who believed they could satisfy aggressive empires by giving them what they wanted. Those leaders were wrong and millions of people died because of their mistakes. The Altarian straightened in his chair, and his tone became more formal. Admiral Hayes, the Federation has maintained peace for over 2 centuries through careful diplomacy and reasonable compromise. Your species' aggressive tendencies are well documented, but they have no place in civilized galactic society. Hayes smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Our aggressive tendencies are the reason half the Federation worlds are not speaking Krellian right now. When the Krell Empire invaded the outer sectors 20 years ago, it was human ships that stopped them. It was human soldiers who died retaking those worlds. The screen flickered as Kethter consulted with someone off camera. When he returned, his expression had hardened. Admiral, the Federation Council has authorized me to inform you that continued resistance will result in the immediate expulsion of humanity from the Federation. Your people will lose all trading rights protection agreements and military support. Hayes turned to look at her officers. These people had given up everything to stand with her. They would spend the rest of their lives as outlaws hunted by the same government they had served faithfully for decades. Negotiator Kethter, tell the Federation Council that humanity survived for thousands of years before we joined their organization. We built our colonies with our own hands and defended them with our own blood. If the Federation wants to abandon us, then they are welcome to try. The transmission ended, and the command center remained quiet for several minutes. Hayes looked at the tactical display again and realized something had changed. The number of human ships was increasing. Amy called out from her station. Admiral, we are receiving transmission from civilian vessels, requesting permission to join the defense fleet. Hayes activated the communication array and found herself looking at a grizzled man in a merchant captain uniform. The cargo hauler behind him was old but well maintained. The bridge crew looked like they had been working ships for most of their lives. Admiral, this is Captain Roy Davis of the merchant vessel Earthbound. We are carrying medical supplies and emergency rations for New Denver. Request permission to join the defense fleet. Hayes studied the man carefully. Captain Davis, you understand that Federation law forbids civilian vessels from participating in military operations. You could lose your license and face criminal charges. Davis smiled, and Hayes could see that several of his teeth were missing. Admiral, my license is not worth much if there are no human colonies left to trade with. The Earthbound is not much of a warship, but she has good engines and a crew that knows how to work. The transmission switched to another ship. This one was larger and cleaner with the markings of a passenger liner. The captain was a woman who looked like she had military training in her past. Admiral Hayes, this is Captain Kate Rivers of the liner New Hope. We have converted our passenger compartments to carry volunteer fighters. Many of these people are former military, and they have brought their own weapons. Hayes felt something she had not experienced in weeks. Hope. These people were choosing to fight even though they had no chance of winning. They were choosing to stand with their own people instead of running away. The communications kept coming. Mining ships from the asteroid belt, research vessels from the outer rim, even a few small patrol boats that had been decommissioned and sold to private owners. Each captain gave the same message. They would not abandon their colonies. Amy looked up from her console with excitement in her voice. Admiral, total count is now 68 ships. Still heavily outnumbered, but the odds are improving. Hayes nodded and activated the fleet-wide communication system. Her voice would reach every human ship in the system and several others that were still arriving. This is Admiral Hayes to all vessels. In 6 hours, the Zephyrian fleet will arrive at New Denver. They expect to find empty colonies and scared humans running away. Instead, they will find us. She paused and looked around the command center. These people had risked everything to be here. The least she could do was be honest with them. The Federation has abandoned us. The galaxy thinks we are weak. The Zephyrians believe they can take our worlds by simply demanding them. Today we show them all that they are wrong. Hayes took a deep breath before delivering the words that would define everything that followed. Humanity does not beg. We do not run. We do not surrender. If they want our worlds, they will have to take them from our dead hands. The response from the fleet was immediate. Cheers and shouts came through the communication array from dozens of ships. Hayes smiled as she watched the tactical display update with new arrivals. The Zephyrians were coming, but they would not find the easy victory they expected. They would find humans ready to fight and die for what was theirs. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant as red lights flashed across every console. The emergency transmission from Federation High Command had been playing for 3 minutes now and nobody spoke. Amy Foster sat at her tactical station with her hands frozen over the controls. The bridge crew looked at their captain and waited for him to say something. The message was simple, but it hit like a hammer. The Zephyrian Empire wanted 3 human colonies as tribute. New Denver, with its 5 million people. Port Liberty, where families had lived for 4 generations. Haven's Rest, where children played in crystal gardens their grandparents had planted. The Federation Council had voted to give them away like trading cards. Morrison felt his jaw tighten as he listened to the recorded voice of Federation President Zaltok. The Centaurian spoke in that calm tone all politicians used when they told you terrible news. The Zephyrians had conquered 12 star systems in 10 years. They had weapons that could crack planets. The Federation needed peace and 3 human worlds was a small price to pay for it. The captain looked at his crew. These people had served with him for 8 years. They had fought pirates in the Outer Rim and rescued colonists from failing atmospheric processors. They trusted him to make the right choice even when there was no right choice to make, and he finally broke the silence. She was young for a tactical officer, but she had grown up on New Denver before joining the fleet. Her parents still lived there, in the same house where she had learned to walk. Sir, the transmission also contains direct orders for Admiral Hayes. Morrison nodded. He had expected this part. Lisa Hayes commanded all Earth Defense Forces, and she was the highest-ranking human in Federation military structure. If anyone could find a way out of this mess, it would be her. The orders were exactly what Morrison feared they would be. Admiral Hayes had 72 hours to evacuate all 3 colonies. Transport ships were already being diverted from other routes. The colonies would be abandoned and their populations relocated to overcrowded worlds. Deeper in Federation space, Amy read the technical details in a voice that got quieter with each line. 15 million humans would lose their homes. Farms that fed half the Outer Rim would be handed over to aliens who saw humans as barely more than animals. Children would grow up in refugee camps instead of running through fields their families had worked for generations. The bridge stayed quiet for a long time after Amy finished reading. Morrison could hear the hum of the ship's engines and the soft beeping of sensors scanning empty space. They were 3 days from the nearest inhabited system and 5 days from New Denver. The Defiant was fast, but not fast enough to change anything. Morrison thought about the first time he had visited New Denver. He was a young lieutenant then, and the planet looked like old Earth before the wars. Green hills rolled away from the main city, and farmers grew crops that actually tasted like food instead of the processed blocks they ate on most worlds. People smiled when they saw Federation uniforms because they still believed the Federation protected them. The captain activated his personal communicator and called Admiral Hayes directly. The connection took 30 seconds to establish across the quantum relay network. When Hayes appeared on the small screen, she looked tired. She probably had not slept since receiving the Federation orders. Admiral Morrison here. I assume you have? Seen the transmission? Hayes nodded. I have seen it, Jake. I have also seen the follow-up messages from 12 other ship captains asking the same question. You're about to ask. Morrison smiled, despite everything. Hayes knew her people well. Are we really going to abandon 15 million humans because some aliens told us to? The Admiral was quiet for a moment. Morrison could see her looking at something off-screen, probably reports about Zephyrian fleet movements or Federation political discussions. When she looked back, her eyes had changed. The Federation Council expects complete compliance with the evacuation order. They have made it clear that any resistance will be considered an act of rebellion against galactic law. Human ships that refuse to cooperate will be branded as rogue vessels and hunted accordingly. Morrison felt his stomach drop. And what does Admiral Hayes expect? Hayes smiled for the first time since the conversation started. It was not a happy smile, but it was determined. Admiral Hayes expects her captains to do what they think is right. The Federation gave me rank and authority, but they did not give me my conscience. The transmission ended, and Morrison stared at the blank screen for several seconds. Around him, the bridge crew waited for his decision. Amy had turned in her chair to face him directly. The other officers had stopped pretending to work at their stations. Morrison activated the ship-wide communication system. His voice would reach every person on the Defiant, from the engine rooms to the medical bay. These people deserved to know what they were facing. This is the captain. By now you have all heard about the Federation order to evacuate our colonies. High Command expects us to abandon 15 million humans because an alien empire demanded it. They expect us to run away and let our people become slaves, or worse. He paused and looked around the bridge. Amy was nodding slowly. The helmsman had straightened in his chair. Even the communications officer, who usually kept his head down, was paying attention. I am not going to order anyone to throw away their career or risk their life. Any crew member who wants to transfer to another ship can do so with no questions asked and no mark on their record. But I want everyone to understand something. If we follow Federation orders, we are telling the galaxy that human lives have a price. We are saying that our people matter less than political convenience. Morrison took a deep breath before continuing. The Defiant will not abandon our colonies. We will not abandon our people. If that makes us rebels, then we will be rebels. If that makes us criminals, then we will be criminals. But we will not be cowards. The bridge erupted in quiet conversation as officers discussed what the captain had just said. Morrison knew the same conversations were happening throughout the ship. Some people would choose safety and transfer away. Others would stay and fight impossible odds. Amy stood up from her station and walked over to the captain's chair. Sir, with your permission, I would like to send a message to my parents on New Denver. Morrison nodded. What will you tell them? Amy smiled, and for a moment she looked like the young girl who had grown up running through Crystal Gardens. I will tell them their daughter is coming home.